You're watching Moms Matter. I'm your host, Shirin Yadigar, and Melinda Hale is here with us today. She is a singer, actress, wife, mom, about to have her second, and an amazing activist who speaks truth and really tries to unify all of us. And I just wanted to bring her in the studio today so that you could hear her beautiful big heart in person. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
You know, now more than ever, your voice resonates not just with me, but just I think it's universal. You have this positivity and you raise the vibration when you speak because you speak truth.
Thank you.
And rather than the negativity that we're seeing, you just completely silence that.
No.
Where do you find this strength to just speak your truth and to speak up?
You know, it's taken a while to get to this point because I will not lie and say that I haven't fallen down that rabbit hole before of fighting back with negativity and, you know, the back and forth on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever the case may be on social media. But I found that after those types of conversations, I never felt good. So I was like, how can I turn this around to try to get the message across that I want to without getting angry, without responding with vitriol, without responding the way that they're responding to me? And so I actually this is several years ago before I got really involved in a lot of different movements. I took a long social media break and was like, okay, how can I kind of reintroduce myself to people, right? And I was like, this is what I believe in. I was raised in a progressive Christian home. I was always taught about love and empathy, but I'm not showing that right now. How can I take a step back and then come back and show that? So it's really just fueled by wanting to practice what I preach and live up to the faith that I've, pledged myself to my whole life. And I found that it's actually way more peaceful and really calming, and people actually do respond to it a lot better. There are people that are always looking for a fight.
Sure.
And I try not to give it to them. Sometimes I say, you know what, I hope you have a good day. I'm just not going to continue to engage. And I feel better walking away from those conversations. But I have found that a lot of people do appreciate when you try to engage with positive intent and educate them and also hear them out, because everybody wants to be heard. And that's one of the things I've really learned as well.
What does it mean to be a progressive Christian?
So typical Christianity, people think of conservative Christians, evangelicals that have views that honestly go against a lot of people's rights or are only for one specific demographic. And for me, in how I was raised, I have always viewed Jesus being a progressive person. When he was speaking and going around and telling people his views, he was trying to progress them from where they were. That to me is the definition of being a progressive. So I think if we're actually trying to emulate and follow his trajectory, that we all should technically be progressive Christians, because he was trying to make progress in the time that he was living. And that's what I want to do now.
I love that. I love that. I mean, everything you stand for is morally so clear and yet extremely progressive.
Yeah.
You'll stand up for all people across the board. I mean, October 7th happened and you were like, define Zionism for me. Like, what's up with the hate?
Yeah.
Define Islam for me. Define Christianity for me. You are trying to bridge all these people together. Why does it matter to you? Like, why do you care?
Because I see so quickly how it can all fall apart when people don't listen and don't talk. And I'm a huge advocate for education. I mean, I come from a family of educators. My mom was an educator. My sister's an educator. And education is so important. But talking to people and hearing their stories, I think lack of awareness and lack of understanding is really what causes a lot of these issues and these rifts, specifically on social media. And so I'm trying to create those conversations in the reels, in the content that I post, because I want people to hear different perspectives. I want people to engage with positive intent, not make assumptions, and come away thinking like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Or, oh, I didn't realize that was this. Or I've only seen this side of the internet. I've never even made it to this side of the internet before. I had no idea this existed. So I'm really trying to be one of those people and one of those activists that does bridge the gap, because I actually think have more in common than we do have, than we are alike, right? So
100%.
If we can figure that out, start to have those conversations and come together, I think we'll make a lot of progress.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's the discourse, right? But it's very bold of you now, especially after October 7th, when Israel has become so demonized, for you to stand up and say, hey, everybody, just define Zionism for me, right? It's just, that's bold, especially for someone in the entertainment like world. How do you do that without being ostracized? Or are you being ostracized?
I haven't personally been ostracized, at least to my knowledge. I kind of just go about my life and do my own thing pretty much. But it's also not rare for me. I mean, I have talked about anti-Semitism for years. I have talked about, issues in the Black community for years. I've talked about LGBTQ for years. So it's not really this, I just decided to get on the bandwagon, right? So I think people that follow me and know me, they're not surprised when I'm creating these conversations for people. I mean, after October 7th, I have so many Jewish friends. I grew up around a lot of Jewish people. I have a lot of close Jewish friends now. I saw how hurt they were. And I know that they also showed up for me when Black Lives Matter was at the peak. So I wasn't going to not be one of those people to show up for them. I had to show up for them. And I just wanted people to say, okay, wait, what is really happening? What do I actually know? What am I listening to? What am I believing? Have I talked to people on both sides? Whatever the situation is. So it's not difficult for me, and I don't really worry about being alienated. If anything, I've actually received more positive feedback from people, which is always nice. Of course, there's hate. There's going to always be some person that has something negative to say, but I try to fuel myself with the positivity.
You're doing what's right, and you're doing what's right. Yeah. And so therefore, you don't have any fear about the repercussions.
Right.
Because everything you say is with such clarity.
Right.
It's so beautiful. It's how you talk about DEI as well. Mm-hmm. I feel that when the whole DEI movement started, everyone was on the bandwagon. Like, this is so great. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Like, who doesn't want that? Right. And in some facets, it's been hijacked. I'm curious to know what you feel about that and what you're hoping will happen. I mean, two girls, one more coming on the way. So you have two daughters, and this is the world they're growing up in.
Absolutely. And I've been starting this long series on Instagram talking about DEI, and I think I understand first and foremost how people feel about it now, because I do think that it has been weaponized a little bit. I do think that it hasn't been used to the best of its ability and what the original intent of DEI was. Like you said, who wouldn't get on board with diversity, equity, inclusion? I mean, there are so many studies out there that prove when you have diverse environments, you're a better person.
Absolutely.
You're more well-rounded, you have a better worldview, you have more understanding and empathy. But people have specific views on who is, allowed to be a recipient of that DEI, right? And I think that that problem stems from quite a few things. For example, I can talk specifically about the Jewish community and how they aren't included in DEI, because I think a lot of people naively view Jewish people as just being a part of a white community.
Correct.
And so when you are looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, the overarching view, like, white people don't need to be included in this, right? They've been at the top of the food chain, so to speak, for a long time. But people don't understand that being Jewish, as I have learned, is a very multicultural experience. And also, being Jewish in itself is something that people are ostracized for, right? Okay. So I think when you have to take into account all different facets of people's identities and see, okay, where are they not getting fed, so to speak? Where are they not being serviced, and how can we include everybody? I don't think anyone will disagree that the majority of the white community as a whole, they're fine, right? We know that they're fine. Right. But let's look at people's religion. Let's look at their ethnicity. Let's look at their gender identity, so on and so forth, and see how we can make opportunities better for them. So that, in my heart of hearts, is what DEI is supposed to be doing. And I do think that we can get back to the core of that. We just have to make sure that the right people are speaking about it and going into institutions and corporations and talking about it so that it is fostered throughout those communities correctly.
Well, I hope, Melinda, that you come up with a plan to run DEI, because unfortunately, when it came in, I remember being so excited about it. And then I would see in my kids' schools that they were putting everybody in buckets rather than bringing them together. So if you are a Black woman, you come into this room. And if you're a white, if you're Persian, what's the point of that? You're putting us all in our buckets. We don't want that. We want to learn from each other. That's the whole point of it.
Absolutely.
And then they use it to kind of undermine different movements, right? And say, well, if you're progressive, then you need to stand with our people. And it's just not right.
Right.
And I just hope that maybe people like you can come in and really now that you have kids who are
Yeah.
in school,
Right.
that you can go in and you can hopefully change it because it's such a beautiful thing. And unfortunately, I don't think it's doing what it set out to do.
It's not, but I do think that there's hope. And maybe one day I'll create my own curriculum for it, but I don't have the time at the moment. But I do think there are some people that are doing some good work and doing it positively. But unfortunately, the people that do things right aren't usually the loudest voices in the room.
and unfortunately so.
Yeah.
Tell me how you're using your activism. I mean, I see you on Instagram and it's so beautiful to see your beautiful voice. It just shines. It really does. How do you use that in your work? You're an actress, you're a singer. How can you bring that activism and your voice into what you do?
I love this question because I actually just finished doing a short film that my husband wrote. And being able to hire a wide variety of identities and people is something that me as a Black female, as the director, it gave me so much joy. So anytime I'm able to give other people opportunities that I know are talented but may not be able to get those opportunities in the outside world, I'm going to be able to do that. So that's kind of a form of activism, but you're not, speaking about it as activism, but it is a form of activism when you're giving people opportunities that may not necessarily get them outside.
Well, that's a huge form of activism, right? Because we all have a choice. We have a choice on who we hire, where we eat, who we buy from. All of these things are really, that is activism. That's living a very intentional life, which is what you do.
Yeah.
That is what you do.
Yeah.
And I want you to just look at this camera and give everyone one piece of your heart's advice in this world that is so polarized and so dark right now on what you think we can all be doing to kind of listen to each other, come together.
My motto has always been that everything begins with a conversation. And no matter how hard that conversation is, starting it and don't even think about what the end result will be. Just start the conversation because we're so afraid to just ask questions. We're so afraid to pull people aside. We're so afraid to just say, hey, this is what I think the situation is. Am I wrong or am I right? Or what do you think? Just start somewhere. And I think that once you start, you'll find that once you're conversing with others, that people will meet you halfway and have a more positive engagement with you, positive conversations. But everything begins with a conversation. That's where you have to start.
Everything begins with a conversation. I just love that. I want to know a little bit just about like your childhood and how you came up with these values. Like, was this something that you're in your adult life and you're like, this is who I am? Were you raised with these beautiful progressive Christian values?
Yeah, I was actually. My dad was not a churchgoer, so I do owe a lot of this to my mom, just from her experience and the person that she is. She's always had moral clarity and just such a strong moral compass. And so the way that she instilled a lot of her values into my sister and into me, I'm really, really grateful for. And, she spends a lot of time, her and my dad spend a lot of time with my daughter currently. So I know that when she's not with me, she's getting the same,
Beautiful.
The same upbringing that I got, which I'm very, very grateful for. But yeah, I was just always taught to love others. I was always taught kindness and respect and to listen to other people's stories. I never felt that there was a reason to judge people. And I'm very, very, very lucky that I had the parents, specifically the mom that I have. So yeah, that's where it comes from.
And you're now raising your daughter and God willing, your next little baby that will be coming soon. You're going to raise them the same way you were raised.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really, I created the show originally because I really believe it's all up to moms. Like we set the foundation, we set the groundwork. And so if we are not, morally and have those values, there's no way that our children will find, maybe they'll be lucky later in life to find them. Right?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for doing what you do. Thank you for inspiring us and for joining us today and sharing your story and your heart space. And really, it's all about discourse. So I hope that people will have more conversations like these to open their heart.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, of course.
You saw it right here. Melinda talked about how her progressive Christianity has really paved the way to her empathy and her compassion. And all of us can do that. It's all about discourse and having that conversation. So you saw it right here on Moms Matter. Share this with your friends and have these conversations. That's how we will be unified. It's really that easy.